You're listening to Sacramento Smooth Jazz.
Welcome back to Sacramento Smooth Jazz. I'm Michael Andrews, and we're eager to dive into another weekly artist spotlight with renowned smooth jazz artist Peter Morgan, masterfully fusing smooth jazz and coastal vibes along with some bluesy tones. That's Peter's signature sound. From jamming on stage with contemporary jazz royalty like Michael McDonald and Chris Bodie, to uplifting music education programs and charitable causes like muscular dystrophy. His music brings communities together. As a multi-instrumentalist, top-tier performer, composer, and passionate artist who thrills with every jazz-infused layer, Peter, he's the full package. So let's dive deeper into the creative process and his inspiration behind his impressive talent. Peter, I'm so honored to have you today. Welcome to Sacramento Smooth Jazz. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. The honor is mine, my friend.
I'm so glad we had to carve out some time from your schedule, and I'm looking forward to sharing your music with our listeners. One thing I didn't say in our introduction, he is also a Sacramentan. He's in the Sacramento area, ladies and gentlemen. He's out here hanging out with us, and so we get to share what's happening here in Sacramento. So I have a lot, because you have a number of albums, and we've talked about it, and you get into the blues, you get into the harmonica. As a multi-instrumentalist, I want to start there. Talk to us about being a multi-instrumentalist. When did all this start, and what instrument did you begin with?
We went on a vacation to Mexico, and I have two older brothers, 5 and 9 years older. And for whatever reason, my parents bought them both guitars, and they never did anything with them. But then a few years later, this is way back in 5th grade, there was a special interest class you could take, Intro to Guitar. And I took it, and I learned 3 chords, and there was a concert in a decent sized hall, like a theater. And, these kids all lined up in their chairs and sang Down in the Valley. But it was kind of life changing for me. That's when it started, and I never put it down. And I remember in that same time frame, I was dabbling with harmonica as well. And I mean, all I could play was "Oh Susanna," but that's how far back it goes.
I think you just told us your age when it comes to "Oh Susanna."
I didn't say it was on Top 40 radio at the
time. All right. So growing up, listening to music, what music inspired you when you were growing up?
So I was very much raised in the country rock, classic rock era. So the Eagles, Linda Ronstadt, Jackson Browne. And that leads into your question of the multi-instrumentalist thing. I mean, I was a huge fan of Rusty Young on the pedal steel from Poco. And then equally huge, David Lindley on the lap steel, which nobody was playing, which is a steel guitar without pedals. And so I play that instrument as well. So as people would pop up on my radar, that I just, the music just touched me, what they were doing on the instruments. And I thought I would like to go do that. On harmonica, Norton Buffalo was the man for me. And so I kind of have it in my mind as to who were my heroes on each of the different instruments and how they inspired me to go and pursue that additional instrument.
And I've listened to pretty much all your albums.
Oh,
going through it, researching you. And there's a few tracks from previous albums that we've talked about and the stories behind that. I see that you're influenced by David Benoit, Mike Post, Rippingtons, and I can hear some of those elements over the years with you. So do you find that those individuals are shaping your sound when it comes to your creative process? What are you thinking about when you're crafting some music? What's your whole process behind that?
Well, the other day that changed my life was, I told you this story. I was in the garage noodling on something, and I was listening to The Point, the city, whatever it was called at that point, Smooth Jazz in Sacramento. And they played a song that I'd never heard by a group I'd never heard. And they said that was the Rippingtons. And I thought, holy moly, what was that? And after that, I became a zealot, a disciple, Russ Freeman became kind of my mentor. And I signed up for jazz keyboard lessons with a guy that I stayed with for 10 years. And I walked in and he said, "What do you want to do with your music?" And I said, "Here is my CD. Here is a Rippington CD. I want my CDs to sound more like the Rippingtons." Because if you look at Michael McDonald, Steely Dan, and the Rippingtons, the similarities in the 5-chord voice leading sophistication is really, really close. And so I knew that that's what was floating my boat. And so, yeah, I'm very influenced by all of those folks and what they do.
Now, being a multi-instrumentalist, and from what I'm seeing here, you're proficient in over 10 instruments.
But who's counting?
10. No, yeah, who's counting? 10 instruments. So, and proficient. I have this thought process now. It's like, do you start with the guitar? Do you start with the keyboard? Where does your process start when it comes to crafting a song?
I wish that my process was that I would start with a melody, and I never do. I always start with a chord structure over a groove I hear something and I go, oh, that's pretty cool. Well, there's a song called Catalina Camino Cielo on my first album. And I was driving home from a piano lesson in the car, Highway 50, and public radio had on a big band Latin band. And they were playing this song, and it was kind of a groove. And so I just kept pounding this on the steering wheel so I wouldn't forget it till I got home. And I quickly programmed in just a light beat of that. And then I went ahead and put the chord structure over the top of that because, as I said earlier about the Rippingtons and Spyro Gyra and Michael McDonald and all of those groups, it's the background beds of the chords that are so sophisticated and make the music so interesting for me. Then, and a lot of times I write the melody on keyboard on top of that. Then I have to go back and figure out how to play it on guitar. And years into it, I thought, well, wait a minute, you're kind of doing it backwards. If guitar is your primary instrument and that's where you need to be expressive with the melodies, then why are you writing it on keyboard and then having to see if it fits on guitar? Because what works on guitar doesn't necessarily work on saxophone or on keyboard. I mean, there are definite sweet spots and patterns and styles for each of the instruments.
If you just joined us, we're speaking with a local talent, a multi-instrumentalist, an amazing producer, performer, Peter Morgan. And we're talking about him being a multi-instrumentalist right now. And he goes against the grain when it comes to creating his music. And I like what you said because it's so true. What works for guitar doesn't always translate into keyboards and sax and things of that nature. It's very unique in how that has to blend overall. But one thing that people need to know that you performed with some greats like Michael McDonald and Chris Bodie. What was it like sharing the stage with these legends?
Intimidating and
you're intimidating. I can imagine. Yeah, no doubt.
And I don't. Yeah, it's slightly intimidating, but also there's a feeling of not worthy. These guys they're next level up for sure, if not 2 levels up. The thing I found in the smooth jazz world is they're so gracious. I never ran into anybody with a big ego that would put me down for that I was one level down from them or whatever. They're all just musicians, right? They were playing in bars when I was, and they haven't really, they're not rock stars with big egos. So that they made it real easy. And a lot of time I'm hanging out backstage with them before you go on, so you kind of get to know them a little bit. And I try to be really respectful. I mean, I don't ask them for autographs. I'm not starstruck that they would know. And so I just try to friend of mine said, they're just like you and me, man. They're just musicians and they just got bigger breaks.
Now, in addition to your music, because you've been doing this for a while now, but you're all about community service. Mm-hmm. So I know that you're supporting very important causes, March of Dimes, things of that nature. How did that begin? What's the driving force behind the muscular dystrophy and the various organizations that you support when it comes to your music? How did that come to be and why is that important to you?
So there's 2 flavors to that, and one is music and one is marketing. And on the music side, a lot of those I would be asked to perform for a muscular dystrophy event. And I have 5 criteria that I ask people when they call me because I get a lot of calls. Will you come and play? And I always ask them, I don't know if I can remember them all right now, but is there great awareness for me at the event? Is there great awareness for me away from the event? Because I'm trying to figure out how it's a win-win for both of us instead of just, hey, will you come play for free? So is there compensation? Okay, you don't have money. That's fine. Will there be a lot of eyeballs there? Will there be eyeballs away from there through publicity? Is it a cause like breast cancer and cancer in general? That's my pet cause. And you have to pick one, I think, or 2. You can't support everything that comes your way. So I would just map out a criteria as to whether or not it made sense. Was it a win-win? And then I would go and do a lot of free performances for these charitable organizations. And the other side of that is that I have a degree in marketing from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I worked at Intel for a million years in marketing, and a lot of opportunities came my way to help take that marketing intelligence and apply it to organizations that needed help. For example, St. John's Shelter for Homeless Women and Homeless Women with Children. I did all their brand strategy and the marketing plan for them 1 year, et cetera.
Now, speaking of your marketing experience, I understand that you wrote some things for Sacramento Zoo and other custom songs. You've done some jingles and things of that nature.
There was a time when I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to marry my 2 passions. I'm going to take my marketing prowess and my music and put it together. And I was just convinced that I was just going to quit corporate America and go write jingles. And the best way to do that is to just do it, that's how I just, not to be cliche with just do it, but just do it. So I wrote a jingle for the Sacramento Zoo and submitted it to them and produced the thing out. And then I did a few more of those. And that's when it really was fun to marry those 2 things together.
Well, that's amazing. So you have the marketing experience, you're writing jingles for companies and things of that nature. You're involved in community service, multi-instrumentalist. As I indicated in the introduction, yeah, indeed, people need to understand you're the full package. and shared the stage with some great artists. You've been on some major jazz festivals, and you've also had some intimate venues. What is your feeling as it relates to the intimate venues versus the major ones?
Well, they're radically different, and there's upsides and downsides to both. The downside to the big one is I don't get nervous about how many I played for 10,000, I played for 1,000. That doesn't matter to me. That doesn't make me nervous. What makes me nervous is the technology, is that you can't hear yourself. Everything's out of your control. And did the sound guy give me enough echo on my voice? Can I hear my guitar? So that side of it is more nerve-wracking for the big shows, for sure. And then I'm not a headliner at the bigger shows, so you get about a 3-minute sound check, and maybe it sounds that way when you go back on, and maybe it doesn't, and you have to get off the stage in about 90 seconds for the next group to start. So it's a different kind of pressure, and the intimate gigs are just all of that in reverse, the antithesis of all that, where it's slower pace, start late, it doesn't matter. But the real big deal is, at the intimate venues, I love it because I can have such a rapport with the audience. I can look somebody in the eyes. I can have a conversation with somebody in the audience. I like that aspect. And in the big shows, you don't have that. It's just a one-way.
Let's talk about your latest album, 2020.
2020 Vision.
Yeah, 2020 Vision. What was the mindset on that? What was your whole thought process, and what was your inspiration? And for the project itself, because I know each track has a different inspiration, and I want our listeners to hear something from that. What was the inspiration behind that project as a whole?
So they say that, it was 2020, the year, but that wasn't really the genesis of that name. The 2020 vision is, hindsight is 2020 is what they say, 2020 being perfect vision. And so this was about it's 2020 and looking back, and I was looking back to sort of the beginning of smooth jazz. And I wanted to do something that was kind of a throwback to probably the album that changed smooth jazz, but certainly did it for me. I think Grover Washington started it all, but going back to Bob James and David Sanborn's album, Double Vision, was a huge inspiration for me. And there's a song called Maputo that we've played for 30 years. I play it every night I play still. It was not as complex of an arrangement as the Rippingtons pieces that I've been trying to emulate and form a style around, but much more of a standard jazz chart. Like in jazz, you have part A, and then you have part B, and then you may play part A again, and then there's a bridge part C. So there's an A, B, A, C, A, B, A kind of an arrangement, if anybody cares about that. And so I was trying to go back to that more simplistic, traditional, early smooth jazz. And so that's the whole 2020 looking back, hindsight vision. And the first song in there, Fade and Fast, exemplifies that whole concept.
Nice. Okay. I tell people all the time, I said, listen, if you're going to go online and buy music from artists, I would encourage you to buy the whole album because it takes you on a journey. You're going to have a number of tracks that are played more than others. Get the whole album and listen to it, and just go on this journey with the artist, and you'll find that it's really a blessing to see and feel the inside, what's happening with them. And with you explaining it, I think it really just comes alive in a greater way. I do like to ask this following question to a lot of artists. If you can just collaborate or just jam on the stage, with any artist, dead or alive, who would you choose?
Oh, it's a long list.
I know it is.
There was a radio guy way back, I think it was the Eagle, 30 years ago. And I knew him, and he was kind of giving me some career advice. And he said, you need to write a document. And in that document, you need to list who are your influences in all categories. So when a radio person such as today asks you, you can answer, well, this list turned into who's the vocal influence, who's the harmonica influence, who's the guitar influence, the bass influence, percussion, the percussionist from the Rippingtons, Steve Reed, he's the man. So in all these different categories, there are folks like that. But I had a chance to, I haven't played with him yet, but I got a chance to hang out with Jim Messina from Loggins and Messina, Poco, et cetera, for a while. And he was my hero since I was a teenager. So to play with him would be an honor. But Russ Freeman from the Rippingtons, like I said, I have an unhealthy obsession with that group. So he would be at the top of my list.
Awesome. Now, when it comes to communicating with you, how can our listeners get in touch with you? How can they find you online?
It's super simple. It's petermorgan.com.
That is super simple.
I was an early shopper. I bought that when before anybody knew what a domain was, and I've had it ever since. And then I have a YouTube channel and Facebook and everything else, but all of the links the easiest thing is to go to petermorgan.com, and at the bottom of the page, you'll find icons that would take you to Instagram and to the YouTube channel and to pretty much everywhere. The YouTube channel I must have 40 videos up there now. And they're just put up a phone on a tripod and film a live performance. And so they're not, some of them are more produced slideshows when I'm promoting a new album or a new track. But a lot of them are just, hey, here's me playing this weekend. And, if you want to know what I really, really sound like, there's no auto tune, there's no editing. That's a camera on a stand.
I love it. I love it. Now, let's do this. I always like to end our conversation, our listeners hearing a track that you want them to hear, but also I want you to, give us some background on the track. What's the track about? What was the inspiration on it? Who's on it? If you can say, what do you have for us?
Let's take a listen to Snowbound. That's on the new album, 2020 Vision. And I was snowbound. Everywhere I go on vacation, even on work trips, I take a laptop and a little miniature keyboard and interface headphones, and I write on the road a lot. I've written a lot of stuff in Vegas, a lot of stuff in Florida. And there's a song called San Francisco to Florida. I think that was written on a United flight from San Francisco to Florida. But Snowbound, we were up in the Sierra near Arnold at my brother's cabin, and it started coming down, and I started to write this song. And we were snowbound for about 3 days. Funny thing is, if you listen to the song, it sounds very tropical. So it sort of has nothing to do with what was going on of being snowbound, but that's where it started, and that's how it got its name.
And you get to listen to it right here on Sacramento Smooth Jazz. Peter, thank you for joining us today. It has been a pleasure.
Oh, well, truly the pleasure's mine. You have such kind things to say about me, and I appreciate the awareness, and I hope your listeners enjoy my music and come see me. Boy, I'm playing wineries all over the area, and we're out there, and I have some amazing sax players I work with, and if you like smooth jazz, I think you'll like it.
Thanks for listening to Sacramento Smooth Jazz. To continue listening to Smooth Jazz 24/7, follow Sac Smooth Jazz on social media and listen by going to sacsmoothjazz.fm.